Yo, that cliffhanger ending could have been great. Fuck that. This episode was great. The exposition, the inter-character conflict brewing, Peridot's development, or regression rather, which oftentimes can be the most fascinating and stimulating type of character development. Oh geez, this episode, it has so much going for it. And Peridot's cackling noises? Just hilarious. Give her voice actor, what's her name? Shelby Rabara? Give Shelby Rabara an Emmy for this voice acting. Is an Emmy for voice acting even a thing? I don't care. She needs some award thrown at her for these noises. These noises deserve an award. Whew, okay. Let me, simmer down a little. As you can tell, I enjoyed this episode a lot. This has to be my favorite episode in a long while, and a contender for top 10 episodes of the show so far. Amazing episodes often feel like they either take forever or flash by in an instant. This episode, it felt like 2 minutes had passed rather than 11. After they find themselves on the moon, I remember blinking once, and then the episode was over. I was so immersed, time had lost all meaning. The episode starts off with Peridot freaking out over the work ethic of the crystal gems. This may be the first time where I completely have to side with Peridot. The entire planet and all its life are going to be obliterated if the mission to stop the cluster fails, and the crystal gems are the only ones capable of doing anything. Relaxing and enjoying the sunset because they had already worked hard instead of continuing to work themselves to the bone to save the planet seems like a case of confused priorities. Feeling good is not exactly a luxury that is readily available in this epitome of catastrophic situations. Yeah, there's a point where overexhausting oneself can lead to decreased efficiency in the long term, but this does not resemble such a scenario, especially when Peridot, in contrast, has been working non-stop and isn't on her last legs yet. Still, the song that follows and the manner in which Peridot starts to ponder and understand a wider range of emotions and experiences via engaging in music was fantastic and brilliant. Lion teleports the gang to the diamond base all the way on the moon, and it's of interest to note that Peridot was sinking into Lion's pocket dimension after he finishes the task. Steven has been the only one to have access to the dimension inside Lion's main so far. Remember, Pearl was unable to enter. So was this happening merely because Lion was exhausted, or was there some other reason? A part of me can't help but consider a detail like this as mild foreshadowing to something. Speaking of foreshadowing, there is no way that the room with the black sphere, which at least Garnet has knowledge of, is not something important that will appear later. That was most certainly a teaser for something sinister to do with the diamonds. The circular engravings on the wall resemble planets, so perhaps this room has something to do with all of Homeworld's colonies. And I'm very eager for the day we arrive in this room again. All the exposition provided by Peridot makes sense in context, and it does not feel like the show went out of its way to feed the information to the audience. Steven legitimately lacks practically all knowledge of traditional gem society and Homeworld, as the crystal gems do not teach him this sort of information. But he is a very curious boy who asks questions whenever the opportunity arises. Peridot, on the other hand, is somebody who thinks this sort of information is mandatory knowledge and is very prideful of her Homeworld heritage, and comes off as all too happy to describe how amazing the diamonds are and how great Homeworld's plan for Earth was. This episode contained more dialogue-based exposition about Homeworld and its goals than any other, and while the generalities are something we could have already assumed, it was still fascinating to see the details and the actual visual representation of what the Earth would have become if not for the intervention of rose quartz. Peridot also makes 2 references to the intended purpose of gem creation. Gems were designed to conquer worlds and created to serve diamonds. This statement is vague. Is it simply restating what we already know in regards to gems being produced in kindergartens and being subject to rigid and strictly enforced societal roles? Or is there an implication that diamonds initiated the creation of other gems to do their bidding? Or perhaps there's even an entity or entities above the diamonds? Are diamonds included when Peridot states that gems were designed to conquer worlds, meaning, of course, that somebody or something designed the diamonds themselves? It's really hard to say, but I would very much prefer to think the phrasing Peridot chose to use is insinuating something beyond what we already knew. It seemed like the weeks of exposure to Earth and its inhabitants were having an effect on Peridot, but in this episode she has had a major lapse back into her old character and regresses to the point where we have to wonder whether she learned anything beyond deriving pleasure from new things. Peridot demonstrates in the most blatant way possible that she still fails to see the importance of any life that is not part of the Homeworld Empire. The prospect of expanding and growing more gems at the expense of annihilation and extinction of other life forms is still something she considers a no-brainer. Peridot's perspective is that the actions of Rose not only doom the life on Earth, but Earth as a potential colony as well. And this train of thought, of course, enrages everybody but Steven and destroys the recently acquired synergy and rapport that had been starting to develop. Steven's huge heart, capable of seemingly infinite forgiveness, leaves him only with disappointment rather than anger. But after he sees Peridot sneaking an instrument back with her, which I can only assume she will try to use to contact Yellow Diamond, the episode ends with Steven bearing an expression I would best describe as stark determination. It's an expression so unlike Steven, and the memory of it lingers long after the episode has ended. What a foreboding way to end such a great episode. I absolutely loved it.